What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Rangers. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Eric Wilson. Today, we're going to get a little controversial. We're going to talk about the final big-time blockbuster trade that the Rangers could potentially make ahead of the deadline. This is a trade that a lot of Rangers fans have wanted to see happen for a very long time. However, it's not very likely to happen anymore considering the Tarasenko trade, but it is still possible. The hope is still there. The dream is still alive for the New York Rangers to trade for Patrick Kane. So we're going to go ahead and dive into it, discuss how it's possible. However unlikely it might be, it is possible. So we're going to go ahead, dive into it, talk about whether or not we think the Rangers should try to make this happen. But without further ado, Eric, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing good. Despite the Rangers snapping their little point streak they had going on with a pretty brutal loss to Winnipeg last night. It's always exciting to talk about Patrick Kane. I've been saying for months now that I want this to happen, even though some fans might not. I think if we were to add him to the roster, it would pretty much just solidify a really deep playoff run right there for the Rangers. So I'm ready to just get on into it.
Yeah, it's tough to say, but the Rangers did get Winnipegged last night. And I had to make that joke. I heard it, just had to. And so let's go ahead and discuss how Patrick Kane could prevent that from ever happening again, potentially. Now, we all know Patrick Kane, one of the greatest hockey players ever. 2023 so far, 52 games played, 14 goals, 27 assists, 41 total points. And for the Rangers to make this trade, now we found this on Instagram, NYR2023_. Shout out to you, my friend. But he had a scenario laid out how the Rangers can still acquire Patrick Kane. Now, this is a three-step process. Number one, waive Jacob Leschyshyn by February 25th to accrue plus $1.75 million in cap space. So getting rid of Leschyshyn will acquire the Rangers almost $2 million in cap space. Step two would be to trade Vitaly Kravtsov to shed $875,000 more in cap space. So now you're up to around $2.5, almost $3 million in cap space cleared up there. The step three would be to get a third party involved to drive Patrick Kane to an average annual value of $2.625 million. So 75% of his salary would need to be retained by other teams in order for him to fit under the New York Rangers salary cap. There's actually a step four. It would be trade the right pieces to acquire Patrick Kane. Now, here's everything that the Rangers have to play with. And Eric, I'm going to ask you, out of these pieces, who are you willing to part ways with, or what, considering there's some draft picks? They have a 2023 first-round pick, a second-round pick, a third-round pick, Zach Jones, and Vitaly Kravtsov. That's everything that Drury has to work with in order to make this deal happen. So I know it's a pretty convoluted, complex deal that would need to be made, many steps involved. But Eric, if you have to get rid of any of those guys or any of those draft picks that I mentioned, what's the price that you're willing to pay in order to see Patrick Kane wear a blue shirt?
I mean, it's probably going to take all of those pieces right there if we are going to see it happen, because with the way a three-way trade coming in just to get the AAV down as low as we need it to be, you're going to have to get rid of a couple of players right there. And Zach Jones is one of those guys who didn't really fit in on the team next to Braden Schneider's this season. And he doesn't really have a place, He's kind of just there in the AHL, just kind of wasting away his time. So if we're going to trade a prospect, it might as well be him, let him go succeed somewhere else, because as deep as our defensive core is, we're really never going to see him get big time, like ice time in the NHL, as long as he's on the New York Rangers. Then, Kravtsov, he has to go. He requested a trade. He's not doing anything for the team. And, he's making close to $1 million right there. So down to include him as well. And then just trading for Patrick Kane himself. He's a good player. He's going to cost a lot. So you're going to have to include like a first-round pick and a second-round pick. And then in order to get a team to want to take on 25% of Kane's salary, we're going to have to give them something too. So probably another third-round pick, or maybe even another second right there. So it's going to be expensive. It's going to be complicated. Finding the third team is really going to be the most difficult part, which is why it's so improbable. But, despite how improbable it is, we keep hearing about it in the news and the media. Patrick Kane has said the only two teams that he wants to be traded to are the Rangers and the Maple Leafs. But the Maple Leafs just went out there and acquired Ryan O'Reilly. So I don't really know what their cap situation looks like, but I already know they were pretty strapped for cap. And now they just went out and acquired like a pretty big-time player. So they pretty much can't have much. I don't think they're going to be making any moves on Patrick Kane. So if Patrick Kane is going to be moved anywhere before this trade deadline, I think it's going to be the New York Rangers.
And it sounds like that's what Patrick Kane wants. It sounds like he wants to go to the New York Rangers. However, he also made a comment on the fact that the Rangers traded for Tarasenko, said it wasn't exactly what he wanted to see, kind of disappointed him. But Rangers got Tarasenko. They could potentially still get Patrick Kane as well. But where does he fit into the lines? Let's go over the potential lineup with Patrick Kane. First line, you would have Kreider, Zibanejad, Tarasenko. Second line, Panarin, Trocheck, Kane. Third line, the kid line, Lafreniere, Hedl, and Kakko. Fourth line, Mott, Goudreau, Vesey. Now, Eric, I look at those lines, and I think that these are massively improved. I think especially when you look at Mott, Goudreau, Vesey falling down to that fourth line makes a lot of sense. And just bolstering that second line with Panarin, Trocheck, and Kane, dude, this might be the Stanley Cup winning roster in my eyes. And I don't know. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on that. Would this lineup right here that we're looking at, would that be exactly what the Rangers need in order to get into the Stanley Cup Finals?
I mean, yeah, I would say so. You look at like super teams like the Tampa Bay Lightning, who won back-to-back cups just like 2 or 3 years ago. I think that this potential lineup might be able to beat them, and it's a little like scary because a lot of the players on that team are rentals. Patrick Kane, we probably wouldn't be able to re-sign. Tarasenko, we're probably not going to be able to re-sign. So if we do take the risk and put this super team together, it might set us up for a pretty disastrous couple of years in the next couple of years as well, with all the other guys we got to re-sign, like Lafreniere, Hedl, Keandre Miller. So that's the risk that we're going to have to take if we get rid of all of these assets, these picks, these prospects, to put all of our faith in the Patrick Kane and Vladimir Tarasenko. But I think that gives us the best chance to win the Stanley Cup. So it's like you can be on either side of the spectrum here if you think it's worth it to risk it all for a Stanley Cup, or just take what we have, keep some pieces for the future, and just hope for the best.
Yeah, and so that's kind of like the risk reward, right? You want to go all in, swing for the fences on this season, or do you think that the Rangers should probably try to keep some of their future picks, like the 2023 first round pick? It's almost undoubtedly going to have to be utilized in this trade to acquire Patrick Kane. So is Patrick Kane on that 1-year rental to get the Rangers hopefully to the Stanley Cup and win? Is that worth sacrificing the future with a first round pick?
If we win the Stanley Cup, then yeah, obviously.
But what if you don't?
If we don't, then no. And that's the hardest question to answer, because who knows what we're going to do? How are we going to perform? Recently we were playing really well, and then all of a sudden, the last couple of games, Igor himself has looked a little bit shaky. The Rangers in their last 4 games, I think, have been outscored 10-4. So we're starting games off poorly. We keep having to make these comebacks to get these wins. So despite us being really good the last couple of weeks, there are some little questionable areas that makes me wonder, how well structured is this team going into the playoffs? Is Igor going to be back into his prime mode, God mode, when we start the playoffs? Because looking at the teams in the Metro, we're going to have to most likely play New Jersey, who's a good young team. If we beat them, most likely going to play against Carolina, who we all know what they can do. And then when you make it to the Eastern Conference Finals, I'm just going to go out on a limb and say most likely Boston, who hasn't even hit double-digit losses right there. And then, whatever team from the West makes it to the Cup final is obviously good enough to make it to the Cup final right there. So I don't know. It's going to be a tough run no matter what, even with Patrick Kane. So I don't know. It could be worth it. It could not be worth it. I don't have a solid answer right
All right,
now.
let's say that you're in the driver's seat. Maybe you're right in Chris Drury's ear, or you are Chris Drury. Are you making the deal happen? Is this what you're, spending all of your time and energy on over the next couple of days or weeks and making sure that this does happen? Or are you just okay, if the right pieces come together, the right parts, moving parts come together, sure, we can try and see if it'll work out, but it's kind of like a reluctance thing. Maybe we'll go for Patrick Kane, or are you looking at it as okay, let's swing for the fences. Let's go for the home run. Let's go get Patrick Kane.
If I was Chris Drury, I would be spending a lot of time and energy looking at the trade, moving pieces around, talking to different teams. And if the perfect deal presented itself, I would take it. But I feel like we don't need to go all in, get rid of everything to acquire just one player. So it's yeah, I'm investing my time and energy into this trade, but I'm not going to immediately take the bait the second it's given to me. I know, going to sniff around it a little bit, make sure there's nothing fishy going on. But then at the same time, you also got to be looking for other pieces, because we know Drury's not done. We know that there is still a couple of things that need to be filled in. Jake Leschyshyn has looked terrible the last couple of games. He kind of got to go. Kravtsov kind of got to go. So look for another fourth line center, maybe Nick Bonino, Nick Bjugstad, maybe another small time winger Tanner Jeannot we talked about. You know, there's a lot of lower names out there who would be a lot easier to just acquire. Just trade straight up, Kravtsov 1-for-1, maybe just a couple of draft picks. But definitely keep Patrick Kane in mind. He's a player that would insanely change the dynamic of this team, seeing him reunite with Panarin. They haven't played together since Panarin's rookie season in Chicago, but the chemistry they had was incredible. So just to see a line of just Panarin, Trocheck, Kane, I think that would just tear up the league. And
Yeah.
so,
okay, so let's put it down to those two options though you mentioned. Okay, like there is the opportunity where the Rangers can go ahead, make the big time splash blockbuster deal and try to acquire Patrick Kane, or they could save their assets and just try to improve that fourth line and keep the team intact and make sure that this team, or at least try to hope for this team, to go out and win the Cup final, right? Those are your two options. You make the blockbuster trade, sacrifice the future, swing for the fences, or do you play it safe if you're Chris Drury, just acquire some more small-time talent and hope that that's enough to give you the depth that you need to go ahead and win it all? Which one are you picking?
It's tough. I really want to see Patrick Kane as a Ranger, and as much as I love him, I feel like it might be a little too risky to go out and get him. A little too expensive. If it doesn't work out, then we are screwed.
I agree with you. I'm in the same boat. I think that the Rangers should just play it safe, acquire the low-level talent to improve the depth on their roster, and hope that the roster that they have intact, which is already very good, very solid, especially following the Tarasenko trade, I think you keep this intact, you add one more small piece, that might be enough to give you a little depth, take a little relief time, little ice time off of some of those guys up at the top lines. That might be all that you need. I don't know if you necessarily need another superstar to enter the mix on your second line. I don't think that that necessarily guarantees you a Stanley Cup. But yes, it improves your odds. However, your odds are also improved by having some more depth down on the fourth line. And I think that's the way that the Rangers should go because, listen, Patrick Kane, amazing, might just be the one to get us to the Cup Finals and win it. But if he isn't, then you're talking about mortgaging your future for a failure in the present. And that's where I'm kind of skeptical about the whole thing. I think it is a little bit too risky. And I usually like taking risks. I'm a risky guy. Eric knows this. We do some risky unspoken business together every now and then. But
that sounds so suspicious.
That does sound really suspicious. But that's how we be sometimes. But listen, the risk, I don't know if it's worth the reward. Of course, the high-end reward, yeah, it's worth it. But you have no guarantee of getting that reward. It's too risky for me. So I guess before we wrap up, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, just the whole 3-team trade thing is always a little confusing, you know? There's like, maybe we could get Kane for a little cheaper because the third team would also be sending something over to Chicago. Maybe would acquire like another player as well with Kane. So it's all speculation as of right now. You know, it's not going to be a simple trade with a 3-team trade. There's going to be like at least 10 pieces being moved around. So maybe a deal will pop up one day and we'll be like, you know what, that was a really good deal. But until I see it right in front of me, I don't know.
Neither do I. It's going to be really interesting, though, to see how everything unfolds with Chris Drury, the Rangers, and maybe even Patrick Kane. But we're going to keep you updated right here on Fireside Rangers, so please make sure to subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. Leave a like if you enjoyed this one. Much appreciation and love for all the support on the most recent episodes. We flew up in subscribers recently. Please keep smashing the subscribe button. It makes us really happy and warm and fuzzy on the inside. And we love providing as much content to you all as possible. So continue to leave likes, subscribe, and comment your thoughts and opinions down on today's video. We'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one. And let's go Rangers.
Except for Jake Leschyshyn.